Hi everybody, this is Noelle at Petitti's and we're here at Oakwood Village and it's spring and guess what? It's time to transplant or pot up or do whatever you need to do with your houseplants. When houseplants start actively growing, when the day length starts to lengthen, we spring forward with the time, your houseplants, you'll kind of see them perk up a little bit. And that's actually a time where you can start to increase water and you can actually start to fertilize. When you're watering your houseplants, if you're having a very hard time, if the roots are taking up a lot of soil space, it seems like you're watering daily, just to try to keep this plant up and alert. So needless to say, it might be time to transplant. In this respect, this peace lily is really root bound. So I'm going to pull it out of its pot. It's in a 6-inch pot right now with a saucer. And look at the root system on this plant. So it is really fibrous. It's very hard to even get my fingers in. So it's something that could be divided, really no problem whatsoever, or repotted. So lots of times Angelo will talk about repotting. He normally says remove about 1 inch or 2 of the root system. The reason being, and you can tell on this plant, it's almost all roots. So again, removing this root system is going to help this plant develop new roots. So we're gonna take off the bottom of the root system and then score the sides of this peace lily. So we're actually cutting those roots that are wrapping around the outside of the root ball. And we're gonna remove anything that's larger than about a pencil, which I really don't see. They're pretty thin, fibrous roots. If you had roots that were a dark color, maybe a yellow or an orange, or were kind of smushy or brown, that smelled, sort of rotting, that would be definitely an area that you'd want to remove. In this case, the peace lily, the roots look really healthy, so there's no problem with that whatsoever. And then once we do that, what we're going to do is we're actually going to divide the peace lily so you can grow it in 2 separate pots, or you can give a pot to a friend or a loved one. So that's always really nice too, to kind of share your plants. You might need your pruners. You might need a sharp edge trowel that you can actually work on the root system of this plant. Again, don't be too timid about it. You can really get in there and cut. And you're gonna see me as I'm doing this, I'm just cutting with my pruners about 1 inch off the bottom of this plant. And I'm kind of sticking those pruners in and really working all the way around. And I'm pruning right through the center right now. So look at that. So a whole inch has come off the bottom. And then you can see all those white fibrous roots that are inside there. The next thing that I'm going to do is actually take my pruners and I'm just going to score the sides, because I really don't want the root system to be wrapping around that root ball. I want those roots to grow straight down or straight out. And so I'm just going to score the side. Sometimes you can get your fingers in there, but with this peace lily, it is not going to happen today. So no problem. I'm going to take those pruners and score. So we've got a nice kind of loose root ball. Some of those older roots have been, are coming out, which is fine. And then the next thing that you can do is, when you look at the peace lily, they grow in kind of clumps or clusters. So the next thing you can do is you can actually kind of go through and find a nice dividing point in between the clusters. I'm going to take, there's probably, 3 to 4 clusters in here. And I'm going to take the trowel and I'm just going to jam down in between the clusters. Okay, so I'm going to actually move down through the root ball. And sometimes you have to get the pruners to go in and take care of it that way too. Now, you can tell from the inside, There are little clusters that were growing on the inside. See these little guys? These are all separate little plants. So you literally could divide some of these other clusters that have roots on them, and you could move them into smaller pots as well. So what you can do at this point is select a container. Obviously, we're not going to put it back in the 6-inch container. That would be a little bit too big for these divisions. So what we can do is we can select a little bit smaller container. This is about 4.5 inches wide, has a saucer with it. It's just a terracotta. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill with potting soil, probably about 3/4 of the way up, nestle some of the divisions right into the potting soil, make sure the roots are down secure into the soil, and then we'll fill in with more potting soil and go from there. Be sure to use potting soil, whatever type you like. Petitti potting soil works out great, but you need to use potting soil for indoor houseplants because that's a very light soil. It's basically peat moss based, okay? Has some perlite, which are those little white styrofoam pearls in it. And that really helps the root system as far as it can absorb water when it needs it, and then the water can drain through it. So there really is a purpose to how light potting soil is. And what we want to do always when we're container gardening and you're planting anything in a container, make sure you give yourself about 1 inch, 1/2 inch of space, which we call the water space. And so when you're watering, the water goes into that pot. I mention it all the time. I do sound like a broken record, but it's really important. You don't want to fill that pot up all the way to the top with soil. So we have a beautiful piecely division. Oh, I picked the one with the flower. I didn't even realize. And then the last thing that you're going to want to do, since it is spring and all through the growing season, you're going to want to feed your houseplants. Houseplant feeding can be very, very easy. Osmocote, it lasts about 4 to 6 months for indoor houseplants. So usually 1, maybe 2 fertilizations will work. And I would say on this 4.5 inch pot, you're really using maybe 1 teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of fertilizer. I'm just trying to scratch it in into the soil, just at the top layer of the soil. And you're going to water and you're done. Okay, enjoy.